Good Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about, and we continue to talk about DeAndre Hopkins, cut by the Cardinals, free agent. Browns, one of the teams that is rumored to be in the hunt. Not sure how much the Browns are, actively pursuing DeAndre Hopkins. Shannon Sharpe, Skip Bayless, on the possibility of Hopkins reuniting with Deshaun Watson. This is from FS1's Undisputed.
Deshaun tweeted something yesterday. He's like, hey, all I can do is make a call. I would love to rekindle. Sure. I would love to have him up in Cleveland.
Yeah, I remember one overtime game against my Dallas Cowboys that was a low-scoring game, and finally Deshaun hit D-Hop, who just broke it open. He just broke away, and I said, well, that's just too you can keep him down for a while, but you can't keep him down for an extra overtime.
I mean, with pair him with Amari Cooper, Schwartz, who's a speedster that can take the top off the cover, and Njoku.
Okay. Yeah, but I saw that the head coach in Cleveland said, Stefanski said, I kind of like our receiver room. So I don't think they love his personality. I think they're all a little leery of his personality. I am not.
And again, what Bayless is referring to, number one wide receivers usually want the ball a lot. That's, again, an assumption. He hasn't come out and said that, but DeAndre Hopkins, a guy who has been and is used to being a number one wide receiver. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason very quickly.
What's going on, everybody? It's Cardiac Kid, formerly known as ET. I just wanted to know what you guys think about D-Hop coming to Cleveland. I just want to see what you guys thought. I personally don't think it's going to happen, but I do like the conversations. Thank you. Have a nice day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, your thoughts about DeAndre Hopkins possibly coming to Cleveland?
I mean, it'd be nice if you can get him, right? Like, it just depends on how badly do you want him versus how badly do you need him. And I think that's an important conversation to have, because you could want him, but I don't think you need him. And I think that's where the value starts to come in for him, right? If you can get him for less than market value, I think you would absolutely do it. I think there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But if you have to go above market value, and I think you probably will, I think probably the team that gets him is going to be willing to give him at least 15, if not up to $20 million. And I just don't see that being the Browns, because they're not the ones that need him, right? Baltimore, you could make the argument, needs a guy like him. Other teams need him. I think the Browns would like him. I think Deshaun Watson would like him. And, there's a chance at a reunion they would like to do it, but this isn't one of those things where they're trying to make this happen, right? Like with Devontae Adams and Derek Carr, where they were like, we need to play together. And I think that's not the case.
No, and again, Deshaun Watson had a lot of success with DeAndre Hopkins, so you understand him saying, if there's a way to get him, he would be great. This is kind of interesting. Hypothetical situation for the Browns at wide receiver. This is from Jack Duffin, the Orange and Brown Report. And again, he's not saying any of this should happen or will happen. He's saying this kind of is a roadmap of what could happen. Hopkins, $25 million for 2 years. Depends on how much he wants. You trade DPJ for a 2024 fourth-round pick. You move on from Cooper next season, or rather than the plan of keeping him for 2024. That balances out the money for DeAndre Hopkins. But again, you're kind of moving stuff around and not necessarily getting a whole lot better at the position at that point.
Oh, no, I would say D-Hop over DPJ is a big upgrade. I know that people want to buy in on the upside, but I think with DPJ, me personally, he's gone as far as he's going to go. And even D-Hop now, whatever you think of him, is still a much more valuable piece than I think Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I think he would get better. Also, like the versatility in the wide receiving room, I think there's something to be said about that, right? You have Elijah Moore, who's a deep threat guy. You have what's his name? Marquise Goodwin, who's another deep threat guy. And you have Amari Cooper, who's kind of an all-around guy. But still, what this offense doesn't have yet is a proven, like, go get the ball guy. That's what we want Cedric Tillman to be. But we know for a fact that's what DeAndre Hopkins is. And it's not necessarily something that DPJ is. He's closer to Cooper when it comes to his skill set being more all around than having one of those, like, I can just go up and get it things. And that's one of the things that we needed badly last offseason. So I understand why people would want this to happen. And football-wise, I think it can make sense. It's more or less about, hey, do you want to use your cap here this year on this piece, or do you think you want to wait and see what you have pop up during the season and have that flexibility for next year? It's all about the confidence of, do you think truly that signing DeAndre Hopkins is going to be the thing that this team's one step away from when the last thing we saw this team do was 7-10, right? That's the tough situation they're in. If they had like a good season last year and this was like the piece, I think they would be more for it because it does make sense, but they got to make sure that they're good in the way that they think they're going to be good this year.
Well, the thing that they were suggesting, though, that Jack Duffin was suggesting is you get Hopkins, you move on from both DPJ and Amari Cooper. And in that sense, I don't know that Hopkins, you could argue Hopkins and Cooper are similar. I wouldn't say one is.
Well, you move on from Coop next year. You would still keep Coop this year.
Right.
And I think Coop's probably gone next year, right? Like, both, that's the thing. Both DPJ and Coop don't really have that high of a chance of sticking around after this year. So what happens with them next year and bringing in DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know if that changes much. And honestly, if you do think Coop and DPJ are going to move on, that does add something to me to bring in Hopkins, because at least you would have Hopkins the year after, because we don't know what we're going to really have after we move on from Coop for cap reasons next year, and then DPJ because his deal's coming up, and I don't think they're going to be willing to spend the amount of money it's going to require to keep him.
Fair enough. All right. I know you've addressed this Untitled Unfiltered. Most overrated, most underrated Browns, do you think?
I'll pick one off of each side of the list here. I think Deshaun Watson's an obvious one that we could say is kind of underrated, or some people might even think is overrated, right? Depending on how you feel about him. But when I go underrated, I think it's crazy, but like Nick Chubb to me feels underrated, right? Like on this team. I think a lot of people just kind of pushed aside Nick Chubb and thought, hey, just because this team's going to throw the ball more, Nick Chubb's going to be essentially a role player and useless in this offense. And he's still going to be a major player on this team. Like, I don't know why people are just assuming just because a quarterback is here that Nick Chubb's going to be like not as useful as he's been in years past, when he's proven he can be useful in a pass-heavy offense before. And then we have guys who are starting to get a little overrated. I think David Njoku was somebody who was on that list. I like David Njoku, but we keep wanting to talk about David Njoku like he's in that same category as like a Mark Andrews, and the play just hasn't justified where we want to put him. So he needs to be more consistent and put it together on all three phases of his game, right? He's a good blocker on both run and pass, the catching and the receiving, right? Consistency there. That's just where things haven't been where you wanted them to be, and that's where you want that production to catch up with them.
Who do you think ends up being a sneaky good wide receiver for this offense?
I think Marquise Goodwin has a great chance of doing this, because you can see it already in the OTA practices. If he's healthy, I think he's going to be really helpful for this team, because Elijah Moore is fast and quick and all of that, but Marquise Goodwin is capital fast, right? Like that's a whole different level of fast. I was talking to Tyvis Powell about this, and he said there were two guys in the league that shocked him how fast they were: Tyreek Hill and Marquise Goodwin. That tells you how fast that dude is, right? So that kind of speed, and if you could put it together on the football field, which we have seen him do, that can be a valuable thing to where if you put him out there, you're going to start to shed some different looks or make teams show their hand pre-snap. You combine that with Deshaun's ability to read defenses pre-snap, and then you start to put defenses in binds, not even because you're throwing to Marquise, but because of the presence that he brings and the fear that he's going to beat you over top.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear Chris Sims, former NFL quarterback, on if he thinks Deshaun Watson can regain the 2020 form. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Chris Sims from Pro Football Talk, NBC Sports, about Deshaun Watson and Watson regaining the form that sent him to 3 Pro Bowls.
I'm a believer in Deshaun Watson. I am. I'm a believer in his potential. You know, we know where he was before, all this stuff went down. He was definitely one of the top 5, 6 quarterbacks in the game. One of those guys that could run the system to perfection, wouldn't miss a throw. And then when it came backyard, hey, I can carry you guys and make stuff happen here. No problem. I got you. But yeah, like he's saying, he said it right. That was a great answer by him. It's basically been out. He was out for a long time. It's not that easy just to get back on the NFL starting quarterback bike and just be an awesome, I can pop wheelies and do tricks and be the man again. It's hard. I expect him to jump back in the conversation of one of the better quarterbacks in football this year. And to your point, I think that's why we hear rumors of them wanting to open up the offense and do all of that. So I'm excited. The Browns are a team that, if I had to probably pick playoff teams right now, I wouldn't pick Cleveland. But I think they're a team you put a star next to go, there's a lot of playoff caliber aspects about their football team. And then if number 4 gets going at quarterback, watch out.
Quincy, how are you going to know if he is, what are signs that Deshaun Watson is in fact back, do you think?
Oh, you'll know, right? Like, it'll be like something we've never seen before, right? Because it will be just consistently good play. I mean, when you're at home and you get 3rd and 15 and you're not in that mind of, oh man, we got to punt already, and you're thinking about what you're going to do to try to convert that 3rd and 15, that's when you'll know that Deshaun Watson's back at that form, right? When you feel like there is no lead that is incomparable that you aren't able to take over, that's because Deshaun Watson's playing at that level, right? It changes your outlook on your team's ability to come back, your team's ability to maintain leads, and your team's ability to convert in tough situations. When we're not worrying about that stuff as much, that's when you know that, okay, Deshaun Watson is playing up to expectation, because that's what having a franchise quarterback gets you.
What do you want to see from Kevin Stefanski relative to the offense with Deshaun Watson? What is going to be important for Watson to thrive in a Kevin Stefanski offense?
I think the question should be reversed. what's going to be important for Kevin Stefanski to thrive in a Deshaun Watson-based offense, right? Like, how can Kevin Stefanski kind of help Deshaun be his best self? And that's just seeing Deshaun do the things that we know that he's good at, right? Let him move a little bit more, let him kind of make those outer structure plays on top of the in structure plays. It should be smooth, right? And I don't think it really matters if we're talking about this being a pure Kevin Stefanski offense or a pure Deshaun Watson style offense. I think it should just feel like an offense that works. And I think that's the important thing. If we're in the fall and we're not talking about whose offense it is, that means that's because it's working, right? The only reason we're going to pop the hood and try to figure out which piece is where under the hood is if the car stops working. And that's where I'm at with whose offense is it going to be. It's like, it's not going to matter if the car runs. We're not going to look under the hood, So that's what's important there. It's just that they have that good mix there, that there is a flow to this offense, and that they're not super stagnant. Look, every offense is going to go 3 and out every once in a while, but it shouldn't feel like we can't score points or we can't get anything done, right? Or it feels like we're starting and stopping a lot. It should be a smooth flow to this offense.
Alex Van Pelt, offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, talked about Deshaun Watson getting more comfortable in the system they're starting to implement.
It's just his confidence in the system itself, understanding of what we're asking of him, and how to communicate at the line of scrimmage, everything from protections to calling plays in the huddle. He's improved tenfold since this time last year. And then he made a throw today I haven't seen. It got hair stood up on my arm. He dotted a touchdown in the red zone. That was really, really an impressive throw. So, you've seen it all start to come together, playing with a little swagger out there and having some fun.
Has your hair stood up on your arms on any other ones?
It's been a long time, I will say that. And I've been around some good ones, but that was one that literally was got goosebumps. I was like, wow, that was a tremendous throw and catch.
And Quincy, again, Alex Van Pelt was Aaron Rodgers' quarterback coach, so he's seen elite level quarterback play. It's interesting to hear him talking about what they're starting to see from Watson.
Yeah, and you could tell that everybody's kind of excited about what they're seeing. It's the early part. You just kind of want to make sure that they're hitting the plays that they're designed to hit right now. You're installing stuff, but you want to make sure that goes well and that you see the potential for him to look like the old Deshaun. And here's an important thing to remember for everybody who panicked about what Deshaun did or did not look like at the end of last year. Nothing that we saw indicated that he had physically deteriorated, right? Like, that's the difference between why I'm optimistic about him and not so optimistic about Russell Wilson, because he looks like he physically deteriorated. Like, you can look at things where he's not as fast here. The ball doesn't get as much zip here. It doesn't carry the same. That wasn't the issue with Deshaun. The physical stuff was there. When he had to go out and break a sack, he was able to look like the old Deshaun. When he had to make a crazy throw on the run, he was able to do that. Remember that throw he made in the Bengals game where he was on one leg getting pushed back and then he threw a dot 40 yards downfield? Like, he's still physically capable of this stuff. It was more about a lack of comfort and a lack of familiarity with the offense that he's running. So now that he's getting that, now that he's getting some calm around him in his personal life, I think you're going to start to see more and more of those flashes as he gets comfortable, because that's just kind of who he is as a quarterback. It's what he's done at every level of quarterback that he's played at in the NFL, in college, in high school, and so on and so forth.
All right. Again, I know this is a topic you dealt with on your show, Untitled Unfiltered. Do you think Donovan Peoples-Jones or David Njoku reached 1,000 yards receiving?
I don't, actually. What David Njoku, just because of consistency, like, sometimes he gets to 600 and then or he'll start off really hot and then just fizzle out late in the year. So I just don't trust it there. And with Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think Elijah Moore being there, Marquise Goodwin being there are really going to take away some of those opportunities that he had last year for those big home run plays. And since those guys are a little bit more capable at those kind of things, I think they're going to get those targets. And I think that this team's going to utilize a lot more Amari Cooper than they did last year. The connection between him and Deshaun Watson, I feel like was very underrated. Maybe I should have put that in my underrated video, but I feel like that combination was very underrated in the amount of chemistry that they were able to build over those 6 games. And I think when they get a whole offseason together, a whole training camp program together, I think they're going to come out the season and really be one of the better duos in the NFL.
That kind of leads me into my next question. Who do you think Watson has that chemistry with on the off-schedule plays? Who does he develop that sixth sense with?
Yeah, I think Cooper's somebody who that can happen with, right? Because it just seems like they have a good feel for each other. Marquise Goodwin is another one to watch because this is somebody who trains with Deshaun Watson, has really wanted to play with them for a real long time, finally getting the opportunity to do so, came to Cleveland specifically to get that opportunity to do so. And we're already seeing it in OTAs where these two are on the same page mentally. Like it seems like they're reading the same plays and understanding the same reads here whenever they see the defense do anything. And that usually gives you a good indicator of, hey, I know I can trust you to be where you need to be if I'm going to do a scramble drill with you. David Njoku should be pretty good at this with him too. And then maybe there's space for like an Elijah Moore or somebody else in there to kind of be helpful for him in that way. But that's the one I would look at. I think that's where Marquise Goodwin's going to have a lot of like surprise plays where Deshaun's going to be off schedule a little bit and he's going to find his guy there. Also, wouldn't be surprised if Jerome Ford figures something out here too. Played with the scrambler in college and Desmond Ridder, somebody who's kind of used to moving around a lot, was at Alabama originally where he got to practice with Bryce Young, another guy who reminds me a ton of Deshaun Watson, kind of in that understanding of where every player is on the field at all times. I wouldn't be surprised if like it's not the names that we think. It'll be guys like Jerome Ford and Marquise Goodwin that really kind of step up in that capacity.
Quincy Carrier now going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Bleacher Report ranks the impact of the biggest coaching changes in the NFL. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. So this is from the Bleacher Report. It's rating the impact of the biggest coaching staff changes for the upcoming season. Number 1, they say Sean Payton, Broncos head coach. Number 2, D'Amico Ryans, Texans head coach. Number 3, they say the Browns, Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator, 2022 record 7-10. They project the Browns' record in 2023 to be 11-6, despite a heavy emphasis on the quarterback position. Cleveland Browns' biggest issues over the last 3 seasons involved a soft defensive interior and consistent coverage breakdowns. Jim Schwartz's hiring brings proven defensive scheme coupled with a more aggressive approach. Quincy, you know, the 11-6 I think is pretty accurate, and I think Jim Schwartz is probably the biggest addition player or coach that the Browns made.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the issues that they had last year when it came to run defense and pass coverage, I think Jim Schwartz is going to be very important to this team, not only as a coordinator but also as a mentor to the other coaches on this staff. So I fully agree with you that Jim Schwartz, I think that's probably one of the more important moves, right? Obviously, Dazarius Smith and Dalvin Thomas are very important too. But when he talks about putting all of that together, if we finally get the year that we've been begging this defense to give us, that's probably a huge part of it.
Yeah, and you already hear Schwartz talking, you hear the players talking, and it sounds like there's some things that are starting to be put together that we've been waiting for. Schwartz talked about the importance of the defense being physical in their style of play.
We have specific rules that we have to abide by here, and we're trying to keep the contact down, and we're trying to work with the other players, and it's not a competition of who can win a spot. All those things that are things that defenses do, and so what you see in team periods, what you see even in 7-on-7 periods, that's not where we're going to develop that. We'll develop it in individual periods, and then we'll develop that through training camp mentality, and then just the setting a standard. We have some physical players, and we want to play with effort. We want to be physical, and we want to have a little personality. And those are the things that we're going to emphasize as we go. All the good defenses have those things.
And Quincy, I heard him say that, and I'm sure you've heard me say, I don't think the Browns defense under Joe Woods had a personality or an identity, and that's kind of a problem. Your defense needs to have some identity.
Oh, they had an identity. We knew what to expect. Like after the Jets game, I think we knew what was going on there, right? So give Joe Woods his credit. He did have an identity. I don't know if it's one that he would like to brag about, but this defense did have a certain identity last year of over his whole tenure of just miscommunications and busted coverages. But yeah, it's about having identity. It's about just knowing what you're going to be good at. And honestly, overall, like, the Browns have had this issue, I think, since 2020 of living up to their identity, even on the offensive side of the ball, right? 2020, they established this identity as this tough-nosed, running the football team. But ever since then, we haven't been consistently that team, right? I think that's where the frustration comes in with some of the run-the-ball folks that we hear from during the season, is because they were sold this identity in 2020, sprinkled in with a little bit of pass, and we just haven't lived up to that identity due to play on the line of scrimmage, and just overall lack of ability to stay in a situation to do that because our defenses have been so poor. But yeah, it's about having an identity. You want to know what you can expect from this defense, and you want to know, it just feels good to know, hey, this is what we're good at. If this team wants to do this, that ain't happening.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Jim Schwartz is talking about. This from Pro Football Focus. Third-year breakout candidates for 2023. One of them, cornerback Greg Newsome, on the field for 499 coverage snaps last year, allowed just 41 receptions for 400 yards, seventh fewest among the 65 cornerbacks who were on the field for 400-plus coverage snaps in 2022. And again, Newsome was playing in the slot, so not where he wants to be. We've talked plenty about that. Greg Newsome was still a pretty darn good cornerback a season ago.
Yeah, the way you hear people talk about him, you swear that he was giving up like 25 touchdowns a year or something like that. But yeah, no, he's pretty good. I think he proved that his rookie year, and then he came back and played well his last year. I just think the issue wasn't that he was bad at slot. The issue was he wasn't the best fit for that position. And honestly, he was a better fit for some other spots. So it was just, again, bad management on that side of the ball when it came to personnel, because that's what happens when you don't have your best players in their best spots. But yeah, he's still a really good player. He's going to find a way to be helpful for this team. And I think Jim Schwartz is going to really figure out a way to get the most out of him. And this is his opportunity to prove himself, right? He's a guy who likes to pride himself on covering corners and following guys and playing some press man. He's going to get that opportunity to play a little bit more press man in this kind of a defense. So he gets to live up to that.
Yeah, and again, everybody wants to be put in a position to succeed, to be asked to do the things that you do well. Jim Schwartz repeatedly has said, we got to find out what these guys do well and then ask them to do that and find other guys to do other things that they do well. It seems like that's the definition of good coaching.
Yeah, I mean, it's just figuring out what you can do with what's in front of you, right? So many people get so caught up into what they don't have or what they feel like they need that they're not getting, that they don't really figure out what's in front of them. And I think whenever you hear Bill Belichick talk about this, especially on the defensive side of the ball, he's very key on this. Whenever you hear him talk about prospects or whenever you hear players who are developed under a guy like Bill Belichick, they always say, hey, he told us exactly what he felt like we were good at and told us to just do that thing that we're good at, right? You can move backwards. You're not really somebody who can move forwards. You're side to side. I like how you move side to side, so don't move left, so only move left to right, right? Figuring out what you can do with what's in front of you is the definition of great coaching, right? That's what we give all the accolades to for the great coaches like Mike Tomlin that can figure out how to put these pieces together. Because honestly, look, anybody can build IKEA furniture. And I know people are like, where is he going with this? But anybody can build IKEA furniture because they give you all the parts that you need in the box. Anybody could do it. That does not make you a craftsman, right? A craftsman is somebody who can get some wood from outside, stand it down, and make a bench out of it. That's what a defensive coordinator, a real defensive coordinator, a real coach is supposed to be able to do. And that's more or less what Jim Schwartz is. A lot of guys in the league, they want to build IKEA furniture. They want all the pieces so that, their defense can work. And if you need all the pieces so your defense can work, then you really just don't have a defense.
All right, before we go to break, again, this from Untitled Unfiltered. Make sure to check it out, Quincy's show. Guys we should keep an eye on this year for the Browns.
Maurice Hurst is somebody I have my eye on, right? I think there's multiple. I think you could – honestly, this is going to be the fun thing during training camp. So if you're a fan out there, look at the interior defensive tackle, take out Dalvin Tomlinson, and pick your guy, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like the Kentucky Derby. Like, which horse do you think will win this race? And that's what you can do with the other one. Because honestly, it's wide open. I have no idea. Like, I would love to take odds on this thing, right? Because look, it could be Perion Winfrey. It could be Maurice Hurst. It could be Jordan Elliott. It could be Siaki Ika. It could be anybody. It could be somebody who has not signed with the team, right? You can take the field. If you want to. So that's going to be interesting. Mo Hurst is somebody I think can step up in there if he stays healthy and play well, because he's played well when he's been able to play. It's just he's not been able to play because he's been injured. So that's going to be interesting to see. I think that defensive tackle room is full of guys to keep an eye on, because who knows who's coming out that second spot. And if Jim Schwartz runs this camp in a way where he kind of values competition, then we're going to see some competition with all of those guys throughout the year. And that's where stuff gets entertaining during camp, when you have a bunch of guys going for one starting spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Maurice Hurst as well. Like the signing, and I'm with you. If he stays healthy, could be real interesting. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Just a couple things. First of all, I don't know if it's true or not, but I seen on the internet Jimmy Donovan had a relapse with his leukemia. If that's true, everybody, please keep him in their prayers. And number two thing is all these other sports shows say if the Browns don't have a great season, they're going to probably clean house. If they do, why would you get rid of Andrew Berry, who gave the coaching staff everything they asked for since he's been here? If they let him go, they got a screw loose in their head. They have. God bless you. Love the show, Dave. Be safe, brother, and keep Jimmy in our prayers. Thank you for taking my call.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. And absolutely, Jim Donovan, voice of the Browns, announced yesterday on WKYC that he did have a relapse of his leukemia. So we certainly hope Jimmy gets back to the booth where he belongs in covering Cleveland sports. Quincy, the thing is the reason some of the national media is talking about Stefanski and Berry being in danger if they don't make the playoffs is because in the past, this ownership group has not been patient. They've shown more patience with this front office combination than they have in the past. It would be awfully hard to start all over again, but it could happen.
I hate to be in the position to defend Jimmy Haslam here, but I would say every coach that he fired really quickly was kind of justified why it went the way it went. I think there are other things to be critical of Jimmy for, like getting Johnny Manziel. That was a mistake, right? And that led into like 4 different mistakes that you made after that. But like the bad rap he gets for being impatient, I don't know if that's as earned as everybody says it is, because he fired Mike Pettin after 2 years, but that was clearly a mess. But he also kept Hugh Jackson for 2 years and a quarter, when Hugh Jackson had won a game. Like, in that whole span, he won a game. I don't know. It feels pretty patient to me. Like, he never gets credit for just hanging on. Nobody was doing it. Steve Wilkes didn't get maintained after he had that 1-4-12 season. Like, Hugh won a game in 2 years and got to keep his job. So I always feel like that criticism of him is a bit unfair, because what was any other owner going to do that owns the team when you were given the Browns at the time that he was given the Browns? Like, yeah, everybody was going to fire the people that they fired. Like, name me the coach that they fired that turned into Bill Belichick, right? This is not an Art Modell situation where you push away Jim Brown, rest in peace, and then you also push away Bill Belichick. It's not that situation.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I would defend Jimmy on that. But the reason that Kevin's on the hot seat, and I think it's just Kevin, head coaches are on the hot seat every year. There's expectations, man. Like, you just can't be below expectations. If Andy Reid goes 6-10 since he's won a couple Super Bowls, he gets a year of grace. If he did that 2 years in a row with Pat Mahomes, he's gone. He's gone. Nick Saban has done as much to keep his job as anybody in not pro sports technically, but in sports, right? Nobody can say that Nick Saban shouldn't have ironclad job security. Let Alabama not win the SEC East or West this year, and Nick Saban might be gone, y'all. That's just what it is in sports. You have high expectations. You're the coach of that team. If you don't win, you're gone, right? That point blank period. Basketball, football, baseball, any sport, especially at the professional levels, if you don't live up to high expectations consistently, you got to do something.
All right. This from Mark Sessler from NFL.com. NFL's 10 most improved teams. One of them, the Cleveland Browns. So little matters if Deshaun Watson can't play the fiddle, but the Browns are a balanced beast on paper. Anything less than a wild card berth would double as a disaster for Kevin Stefanski and friends. And again, that gets back to your expectations. When you look at it, it looks to me like this is a playoff team.
And when Jimmy looks at it, looks to him like it's a playoff team, right? And if the man think about it like this. If you went to McDonald's and ordered 20 chicken nuggets and a Big Mac and somebody came back and gave you 5 nuggets, you would want somebody fired for such a thing, right? Because you have the expectation that your buddy is going to get you a certain result. That's what Jimmy's at. He's spending a lot of money for this. If he get another 7-9 or 7-10 season, he's going to be upset. And honestly, you can't blame him at that point because he's been getting 7-10 seasons for like 13-3 money for like the last 3 years. Like, he's going to be upset. Somebody is going to get fired at that point. So, it's just the nature of this business.
All right, before I let you go, Jim Schwartz talking about Rodney McLeod and just how important he is to this defense.
He could play a game right now. We changed some terminology. You try to roll terminology and signals over just so the people you played before don't have a good grasp. So the first couple of days, that sort of threw him for a loop, But, veteran players like that have played the techniques, it comes quickly for those guys. And, there's going to come a lot of times where we play 3 safeties on the field. And he's a part of that. How that happens, I don't know. Whether it's, Grant Delpit going down low and playing like a dime position, or Grant staying deep and a guy like Rodney going down. We value flexibility in those players. We value multidimensional skills. Right now, they're all playing all the positions. But again, by the end of training camp, we'll sort of get a feel for where we are and, what our best matchups are, and, we'll go with that.
And Quincy, they got flexibility all over the place. Their line has a lot of flexibility. Their secondary has a lot of flexibility. Jim Schwartz is going to have a lot of fun designing what he wants to do week to week with this defense.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is interesting is that you look at each level of the defense, right? At the secondary, you can have Rodney McLeod in there. I think Anthony Walker is another one, and then obviously Myles Garrett on the defensive line. You can even say Dalvin Thomas. Like, you got 3 guys now, Zadarius Smith. But each level of the defense has a true adult in the room, right? Somebody who's been in the league forever. They stayed in the league because their ability to kind of just do exactly what they're asked and figure out things and have seen things. So now we have that level of check and balance in this defense to where if something's wrong at the secondary level, okay, Ronnie can go up and say something about that. Same thing with the linebackers, same thing with the defensive line. And last year, we really only had that with Myles once Anthony Walker went down, and we saw the kind of mess that whole situation became once nobody was really there to say, hey, this is what we want to do. This is where we need to be. So I think that's very important. I think Rodney McLeod is another one kind of in the same vein of a Marquise Goodwin. It's going to be a interesting add to this team that I think is going to be a lot more valuable than what we think right now.
Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Thank you, Dave.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff, as always, untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Plenty of talk about DeAndre Hopkins, free agent wide receiver, where he may end up. Tim Hasselbeck from ESPN on if the fit is there with the Browns.
I think it could be a very good fit, Kevin. I know a lot of people are going to draw the connection for Hopkins to go to maybe Buffalo or maybe Kansas City. He's made a lot of money and looking for, to find a way to try to win a championship. But look, I look at the situation in Cleveland a little bit differently. I see Kevin Stefanski as a coach that needs to win, going to be under some pressure to have some success, and he's going to be under some pressure to have Deshaun Watson, who has been guaranteed a whole bunch of money, to play really well. One of the ways you can help make that happen, you already have Amari Cooper. How about putting DeAndre Hopkins, somebody that he's familiar with, on the other side? And oh, by the way, if you haven't been paying attention, the AFC is absolutely loaded with firepower at the quarterback position, at the skill position. And so if you're going to play in a division, we're going to compete against Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. And if you want to come out of the AFC facing quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, then you need to find a way to get it done. And going after Hopkins, to me, seems like it would make a lot of sense for Cleveland.
With that, let's welcome in Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Ashley, it is a tough question to answer. I think if you can make Deshaun Watson comfortable, it helps. The question is, what's it cost?
Yeah, for me, this deal from a football perspective would make sense for, I think, both parties, right? DeAndre Hopkins had his wish list of what he would want in a team, and Cleveland could provide a lot of that. And of course, Deshaun Watson is here. The two are very close. Deshaun Watson talked about that this week at the Cleveland Browns Foundation annual golf outing, and how, I think somebody asked him, have you made your pitch to DeAndre? Have you talked to him? And he's like, well, yeah, I've talked to him, but we talk all the time. He's like a brother, and they have been really close since they played together in Houston. So I do think, football-wise, it makes total sense. It's somebody Deshaun has familiarity with. But again, like you said, Dave, it comes down to cost. And are the Browns just going to get priced out of this? And yes, they had some money come available on the books today with that JJ3 money and the Jadeveon Clowney money expiring finally. So that helps. But I don't know if it's going to be enough to win the sweepstakes, so to speak. And yes, they have some intangible things. And I think, if you're the Browns, you obviously have to do your due diligence and make the pitch to him. But that doesn't mean it's going to work out. And I think ultimately money could be the deciding factor here and why he wouldn't come to Cleveland. But I always am operating on a never say never type of mindset with moves like these. And of course, Browns fans know all too well, because as I always say, the Browns weren't in the running for Deshaun Watson until suddenly they were, right?
Yeah, Andrew Berry seems to find a way to get some things done. Alex Van Pelt also met with media earlier this week. Talked about having multiple weapons for that receiving core in the passing game.
I feel like we've added great pieces. AB and the crew upstairs have given us some pieces, some more weapons. Being able to bring Posick back at that center spot, that was a huge lift for the coaching staff as well as the players to have that continuity up front. And then the experience and the level of play of that offensive line is really impressive. And then you add Nick to the mix in the backfield, and you get Deshaun out there on the edge with the pass catchers. It's positive. We've got a lot of work to do. We know that. We're not there yet. We'll still learn and grow. But excited about what the future could be.
And Ashley, we've talked about it a couple of times. Different skill sets. So the playbook is wide open for what they can do offensively.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten to see that even in the couple of OTA practices that we've gotten to watch. And, I've been saying like the 4 main new pass catchers the Browns have added so far, they all provide something a little bit different that the Browns didn't have last year. So you start with like Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin. They're the 2 speedsters that the Browns desperately needed last year, it felt like at times. They draft Cedric Tillman. He's suddenly the biggest guy in the receiver room. And yeah, DPJ had size, but he's even bigger than Donovan. And then you bring in Jordan Akins at tight end, who's a veteran guy, but he has that familiarity with Deshaun Watson that the Browns are trying to manufacture with these guys that were here already, or that they've brought in free agency, or that they've drafted. But he's a guy that we know already has that. So I definitely think things have just opened up. And again, with the caveat, we haven't seen Amari Cooper in these team drills yet, right? And I think that's a pretty big piece to be missing. But what's promising is when we were out there yesterday, we saw Deshaun connecting on the deep ball with these guys, especially Marquise Goodwin and Elijah Moore. And to me, that's huge because that speed element was just missing for them last season. We talked about it constantly and how they were going to address it, especially with Anthony Schwartz struggling his first couple of years in the league because he's a speedy guy too, who just hasn't really been able to rein the ball in and make those big catches. So I think what we've seen is promising. It's always the caveat. There's no contact in these practices. Guys aren't wearing pads. There's some big faces missing. The defense can't really do anything to stop an offense in OTAs. So it's like he's not getting that pressure he's going to get in the NFL. Like some of the big throws Deshaun made yesterday, like he had plenty of time to get set, make sure his feet were right. And they were really great throws. But like, okay, the next step now becomes, okay, when we're out of OTAs, when we're allowed to have contact and kind of see what this looks like in an actual game setting, how is it going to look now? So there's a lot of work to still be done, but I think even with that and even with that tempering expectations and excitement around OTAs, they are still in a good place. Like it's better than the alternative, which is guys dropping passes and them not making downfield plays.
It looks like there's a lot of competition in that wide receiver room. I know you wrote an article about that. Take us through that and what you think it brings. What does that bring?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, and Kevin Stefanski said this, like, hopefully the cream rises to the top. He said that at the golf outing this week, and I think it's true. It's something that we've been talking about basically since the draft when they brought in Cedric Tillman and Andrew Berry got asked, like, what does this mean for younger guys like David Bell or Anthony Schwartz who are trying to find their way? And he said, basically that if you're an NFL player, you better be ready every year to come in and compete for your job. Otherwise, maybe it's not the right league for you. And I think like Mary Kay Cabot, my colleague, has reported like David Bell is still, for example, very much a part of their plans. But I think ultimately with their situation where Deshaun came back, he played 6 games. It was kind of underwhelming because of how rusty he is. You need to throw a bunch of different type of pass catchers at him to see what is going to work, because part of what Deshaun does so well is the scramble drill and improvisation, which like that's a total 180 from where we were when we talked about pass catchers with Baker Mayfield a couple of years ago, right? That improvisation wasn't a good thing. Now with Deshaun, we have to switch our thinking because of what he can do with his feet and how athletic he is. So a big part of that to me is just trial and error, especially when you have a bunch of players he hasn't played with before. So I really like that they've created this competition. And I think like Kevin Stefanski said, ultimately that competition is going to lead you to find that combination of guys that is going to work best in all kinds of different situations with Deshaun Watson at quarterback.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we will talk about special teams, and Cade York especially. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Bubba Ventrone, new special teams coach for the Browns, talked about the importance that the franchise is putting on special teams.
Kevin had a good portion of our team meeting today talking about accountability and, doing whatever it takes, to help the team win, regardless of what role you end up playing for the team. So I think it's really getting those young players to buy into that accountability factor and really do whatever it takes to win.
And Ashley, you can say special teams are important, but they went out, they got a new special teams coordinator. They got a couple of guys whose main focus is special teams.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this offseason just kind of is like year 2 of a 2-year revamp of the Browns special teams. Last year they went out, they draft Cade York, right? Which, like, not a lot of teams are willing to draft a kicker because, so much can go wrong there. But they needed some stability at that spot since they haven't had it since Phil Dawson. They go out, they get Corey Bajorquez, who performed pretty well for them last year at punter, right? And now, you bring in a guy like Mike Ford Jr., like you alluded to, who is a quarterback, yes, but has made a career out of special teams. He was an undrafted guy in 2018, and he comes in, and that's definitely, I think, going to be a main focus for a guy like that. And then you hire a new coordinator in Bubba Ventrone, who, really, I think, sought after this offseason, and obviously has a history here in Cleveland, made a career himself by being this ace special teamer. And by the way, looks like he can still play when you see him out there. I think Kevin Stefanski has even joked about that, so good for him. But yeah, it's like you can tell the Browns the last 2 years since I've been covering the team, it just seems like they've really rehauled the special teams, and they needed it because how many stupid penalties did we see the last 2 years? The right number of guys not even being on the field. Of course, all the kicking issues they had before Cade got here. I won't include Cade's what is hopefully a growth spurt speed bump for him last year with some of his kicking issues, the way he's been talking. I continue to be hopeful of that he'll be able to rebound. But I think you look at everything they've devoted. They've wanted to turn the special teams around. You can't say they don't think it's important.
You mentioned you talked to Cade York. Take us through the article that you wrote with him and what you found out.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him one-on-one about the new kick return rule, which for folks that don't know, it was just passed last week, the resolution. So now a team would have the option to fair catch it inside of their own 25, and the ball would be placed on the 25 if they do that. So far, players haven't liked it. Special teams coordinators haven't liked it, including Cade York, who told me straight up if this is their plan to try to take kickoffs out of the game, I don't think it's going to work. Bubba Ventrone didn't like it. But overall, the overall sense that I'm getting is no one really thinks this is going to make a huge impact. For example, Bubba Ventrone said, even though this rule exists, my mindset is as a coordinator is still going to be return first, which I thought was interesting. Cade made a great point, saying well, he could see it being utilized by teams who have a big lead already. And that point, how much of an impact is it having on a game? And that guys still overall want to be aggressive. Returners want to be aggressive. Coaches, for the most part, want to be aggressive and get that better field positioning. But I think the important thing to note, a big reason the league is doing this is because they cited player safety. The model the league has says, hey, we think that returns will go down from about 38% of the time right now to 31% of the time. And in that 7% drop, they think there could be as much as a 15% drop in concussions among players. Now, Bubba Ventrone said he still thinks that the kick return is a safe play now, given all the other rules the NFL has added over the years. So I definitely think it's something, and it's only in place for this year right now. So there could be some, potential for backtrack on this or to change the rule back to the way it was or keep it next year. But I think that concussion data is going to be a really important part of this. And I think the league has to be transparent with these players and coaches regarding that and why they're doing it and how it's related to their safety in order for, people to maybe get on board with it. But right now, I'm just walked away from both of those conversations kind of thinking, I won't be surprised. I'm not really bothered by this rule because I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have at the end of the day. I think it might still kind of be the status quo for the most part.
Yeah, and again, transparency with the players is going to be important. If you're telling them it's player safety, you got to show them. So the league will have to show them. Adam Shine, bold predictions for 2023 from NFL.com. He says Myles Garrett will win the Defensive Player of the Year. With opposing offenses facing more pass-blocking challenges, I could see Garrett hitting 20 sacks. Cleveland should be vastly improved in 2023, too, helping the premium quarterback hunter draw more of the attention he deserves. And actually, that's a fair point. Myles Garrett hasn't had much help, especially last year and even the year before. So it'll be really interesting to see how high that sack total goes.
Yeah, and it's like last year, again, that trio of Jadeveon Clowney, Alex Wright, and Isaiah Thomas combined for 3 total sacks, and Alex Wright didn't have any sacks in his rookie year. And then even before that, Jadeveon got his 9 or 10 sacks. I forget what the number was for him in 2021, but he got like 3.5 or something in the last game against the Bengals, which was just kind of a throwaway game. So he had a resurgent year, but there is like that caveat, right? Throughout the year, it's not like those 9 or 10 sacks were evenly dispersed throughout all of the Browns games in 2021. So Myles really has drawn a lot of attention, a lot of double teams, a lot of, chip blocks and things like that. So I overall just think, like, again, that's why I've been so happy with what they've added to this defensive line, because I do think it is not going to allow opposing offenses to just focus in on Myles Garrett, because you can't just ignore Zadarius Smith, right? You can't ignore a big guy like Dalvin Tomlinson, who his strength isn't maybe getting sacks, but he's really good at flushing quarterbacks out to his defensive ends. Obo Okoronkwo showed a lot in a small sample size that he has to build on, but so far promising getting to the quarterbacks. And in Jim Schwartz's scheme, what we know about it, those guys, their job is to get upfield and get to the quarterbacks. Of course, he had that classic line to Siaki Ika about being a Ferrari now and not a dump truck. So I just think I love this rehaul. I think it's going to help Myles a lot.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun to watch. I agree with you. Ashley Bastock, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Ashley.
Thanks.
Ashley Bastock, make sure you check her out. Really good stuff. Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.